Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on what's always an interesting time slot, right? The first morning session after day one. So everyone's kind of maybe still shaking off the night before. Hopefully jam session or whatever you got into. Hopefully everybody has had some coffee. But thank you for joining us for what I think we hope to be like a casual conversation around how Abercrombie & Fitch and company have really worked to embrace customer empathy and understand their customers in a way that goes beyond the data that they collect in surveys around shopper preferences and reactions to advertising campaigns and things of that nature. So I'm thrilled to be here with Kate today.
Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Kate. I work for Abercrombie & Fitch on our customer research team. So our customer research team is kind of broken out by brand, so I focus more on Abercrombie & Fitch. But I don't know if you guys know how many brands are under the Abercrombie & Fitch Co. umbrella. Does anyone have any guesses? 14.
So many.
5. It's just 5. I know. Thank you for that lofty answer, maybe someday. But it's just 5, not just 5, but it's 5 awesome brands right now. So we have Abercrombie & Fitch, which you guys have probably heard of, Hollister, which you probably know as well. Gilly Hicks is under Hollister. It's kind of like the activewear brand under Hollister. And then we have Social Tourist, which was started by some like TikTokers. And then we have Abercrombie Kids. So our team kind of does all of those different audiences. So we have a lot of different audiences to keep up with and understand. So it's kind of like always changing, always growing, always trying to figure out these new audiences. But for me, I live in Detroit, Michigan. I don't know if we have any Detroiters out there. Whoop, whoop.
All right.
But I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Big Ten gal. Went to Ohio State for undergrad, Michigan State for grad school in the MSMR program. So I've been really involved in that. Love the market research community. Love this conference. Love partnering with people like Kevin. So I'll let you do your intro too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Kevin Lubin. I'm an account director at Fuel Cycle. I'm a career researcher who has shifted into a role a little bit more focused on customer development and working with our wonderful clients like Kate and Abercrombie on how they're operating within the Fuel Cycle research ecosystem, brainstorming and strategizing around ways that you're leveraging the Fuel Cycle platform, ways that you could be leveraging the platform. I am a local guy, Jersey, born and bred, so this is kind of a home game for me. My origin, Quirks. I think it's a very full circle moment for me because Quirks Brooklyn was where I was first introduced to Fuel Cycle. Now I am here, and for those who are not familiar with Fuel Cycle, you can advance to the next slide. I'll give you the quick elevator pitch. It's a platform really designed to enable a constant connection to your key audiences, whether they are consumers, prospects, product users. And it's with an idea towards really driving efficiency and agility within your insights practice to hopefully accelerate decision-making within your organization and really expand the impact that insights can have on that decision-making, whether they're coming from market research, UX, CX, really any function within your org. So Abercrombie needs a little introduction. Kate, you gave us a nice overview there. I think you have slightly higher brand recognition than Fuel Cycle.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing during this conference, and like any time I ever say I work for Abercrombie & Fitch, is everyone's like, oh yeah, I really like A&F now. Yeah. But it's like this very like clear, like there was that rough patch that I think we all know about. If you're around my age, you probably liked it a lot when you were a little bit younger and you thought it was the cool brand that everyone at school wore, and then it had kind of the rough patch. And since 2017, Fran Horowitz, our CEO, has been really working on turning the brand around, and I think she's done like an incredible job. And a lot of that is because of kind of our journey to know customers and wow them everywhere. So our team plays a really big role in kind of this reworking of the brand and kind of making sure that we stay really close to our customer, because I think a lot of the reason that we had a bit of a tough patch there a couple years ago was because we got out of touch with who our customer was, and we didn't know exactly how we should be interacting with them and what they cared about. So we've been prioritizing that and focusing on that as a brand so much. So hopefully you guys have noticed that shift as a brand and how we've been evolving since 2017. We've made new focuses on sustainability, size inclusivity, supporting a lot of really important causes. So it's been a really awesome brand to work for, and I'm proud of where we are now, for sure.
We're proud to work with you.
Oh,
that's right.
You know, I'm happy to work with you too, Kevin. So I think embracing customer empathy is something that is super buzzy and we talk about a lot, but really hoping in this presentation to break down what that means for our brand and how we kind of do that as a company. So we're thinking about it in 3 separate ways, all of which are really important and kind of pivotal to staying close to the customer. So the first one is establishing that constant connection to customers. So that's where Fuel Cycle has really come into play, in kind of building a community of customers that we can constantly reach out to and kind of go back and forth with and really connect with. And that's just one of the many ways that we're kind of connecting with customers. And then number 2 is unlocking customer insight through diverse methodologies. So our team is not afraid to try every methodology under the sun, whether we know how to do it or we don't. We're always trying to find new ways to engage our customers and learn everything that we can in new and creative ways. So we'll talk about that. And then the third thing is like, okay, so you've got the connection, you've got the insights, but you have to make sure that the actual organization as a whole stays connected. So how do we actually partner with our stakeholders in the company to make sure that everyone at the organization, not just our customer research team, is staying incredibly consumer-centric?
Yeah, and I think you kind of teased it. The role that Fuel Cycle gets to play in our partnership is really helping to set the foundation to establish that constant customer connection through those insights communities. So you have the 2 communities inside A&F and the Hollister Insights Lab, which is obviously more focused on the Hollister brand, their target market, younger consumers. If along the conversation today, Kate will give us some anecdotes and stories about what it's like to immerse yourself in the world of teenagers from a research perspective. So
don't recommend.
Yeah, stay tuned for
Unless
that.
you have to.
But it has been really, really cool working in these communities. And honestly, one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be sharing the stage with you and hearing more about how you're leveraging the communities is because you and the A&F team really have done a phenomenal job of recognizing and using community as a strategy for that customer empathy and customer understanding. You know, it's more than just a tool in their research toolkit. It's really, I think you and the team have worked hard to establish and maintain a level of engagement, and the success of that is seen in the levels of engagement that you see, the thoughtfulness of the responses to qualitative activities, the media uploads, you know, the photo dumps that people drop in the community, which we can talk about along the way here. It's really, really cool. And what you're looking at here is an example of what the member-facing communities, yes, the laser pointer.
I've been wanting to use this laser pointer. Yeah.
Meet the moderator, things like that. So that's Kate, and that's how
That's
the
true.
community knows them. And it really is about the value proposition for members beyond just the monetary incentives. I think everybody in this room and everybody in research knows nothing moves the participation needle quite like guaranteed monetary incentives, but in a community, it's really important to establish a value proposition beyond that and really let people know that there is somebody on the other side of the opinions that they're sharing and the thoughts that they're sharing in the community, and those are the moderators. And you know, they're not just taking a survey in a vacuum, right? They're continuously engaged, they're participating in longitudinal research, iterative research in the sense that you could launch a survey and uncover some really interesting open ends and say, all right, I want to build off of that and invite folks into a discussion board, you know, a text-based qualitative activity, and then maybe from there, jump off into a series of IDIs or focus groups and dig in a little bit more. And along the way, you're continuously engaging, recontacting these folks, and letting them know, again, that there's someone on the other end that's really actioning on the insights that they're sharing. So I think one of the really cool things about the value prop in the A&F community is they are rewarded with some branded reward points, right? Something a little bit more tangible.
I don't know if you can see, there's like these little, in the corner,
Yes.
You can see how much each activity is worth. So customers go in and they click the activity, and then they can see how many my Abercrombie points they'll get for participating in each activity.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that really does drive participation. But beyond that, I think you and the team do a really phenomenal job of establishing that bilateral communication channel, right, with sharebacks, you know, sharing back some of the data that has been collected. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, hey, here's what you told us, and here are the decisions that we made as a brand to action on that. It can be as simple as just a data visualization of, here's what we asked, here's what you said. You are a part of this bigger community, this insights lab, this advisory board, this council that, you know, is somewhat exclusive, I guess, in the sense that they have a seat at the table, right? The customer voice is in the room where decisions are being made on the brand, and those types of sharebacks really close the feedback loop for folks. And one of the things I would love to hear a little bit more from you about, and one of the reasons that I didn't ask you about this prior to the presentation is I genuinely am curious too as to how the question corner was established, because watching from my perspective at Fuel Cycle, I think the question corner is one of the coolest things that any of our customers do to really establish that connection. What I've seen is it's basically an avenue for folks in the community to ask questions about anything that they can think of. And it's not necessarily just you and the insights teams responding, but it's folks from merchandising and marketing. So maybe you could share a little bit about how that was established and how it's viewed internally within your organization.
Yeah, so once a month, so we call these people insiders so that they feel like, hey, we're part of the inside, we're part of this brand. Any changes are partially because of us, which I think is very true. So it's cool to be able to kind of do that. But the question corner is just a place for people to dump questions about like, okay, how do you decide what graphics to put on your t-shirts? How do you decide what sizes you should offer at your store? What are you doing for sustainability? What teams are you working with and what teams are you sharing this information with? So we work with partners across the organization to get really good answers and give them back to the community. So they feel like, okay, like we're taking you guys seriously. You guys are super helpful and important to our brand. And here's some like inside information that not everyone knows. So we have that, and then you can see, let me use this here again. This row is like all results. So this is something that's been really successful at kind of keeping the community engaged, is saying, okay, here's what you guys said, and these are the teams that used it, and you'll see that in the marketing campaign in 7 months, if you can wait that long. Or you'll see it in clothing in 9 months. So there's a bit of a lag time, but it's really cool when we can tie back and say, hey, you know that survey you did on what you wear to work? Okay, well now we have a whole office-approved section on our website, and that's because of you guys. So it's been really fun to tie back, whether it's through results, whether it's through the question corner. We have a welcome discussion where everyone kind of welcomes everyone to the community. I think you can probably see, it's cut off, but there's like, I think maybe like 10,000 comments in there. Like, cannot keep up. But
that speaks to the level of engagement that I was touching on before, right?
Yeah.
Like what you guys, the motivation that these members have to participate and engage with one another, and not just with you as the moderators, but with each other, right? Member-to-member communication, member-generated content. Really cool.
And in the top right-hand corner, I think another thing that's really important is asking them about their lives and not just their clothing. And so that's something that's really fostered this feeling of connection. And I was actually terrified the first time I posted this State of the World survey, because I was asking, like, how do you feel about your mental health? How do you feel about the environment? How do you feel about COVID? How do you feel about all of these kind of deep things? And the way that people shared in the comment section of this survey, I was like, oh no, like, is this bad? Because it was like everyone felt terrible. Like, it was so bad, but then it was so important for our brand because we shouldn't be speaking to like vacations in this crazy way if they don't even feel like they can afford dinner tonight or something like that. So having that connection, even when it's asking those difficult questions, feels really important and really emotional to the customers. Okay. So that was part one. Part two is really doing the research. So like I mentioned, we are doing all types of different methodologies on our team to really understand the customer. So I have just 4 examples here, but I think you could probably ask us about a lot of different methodologies, and we've probably done them. And you guys have all taught me about a lot of new things to try after this conference. So the first one is customer immersion. So I don't know if you guys have ever done anything like that, where you go and you spend a full weekend with customers. Has anyone done something like that? Kind of like an ethnography, but it's really just like, it's not even really research, it's just like hanging out with them and understanding their lifestyle. So about a month ago, I went to Tampa, Florida to hang out with teenagers all weekend.
Nothing would intimidate me more than going into the nest of Florida teenagers.
I was terrified, but like I learned so much about them. Like, because, so obviously Hollister is, maybe it's not obvious, Hollister is targeting teenagers. And we're starting to feel like, okay, we understood teenagers 10 years ago, but what are teenagers now? Because they are so different. And understanding them is really difficult, to be honest. So like, for example, I noticed these girls were going to the bathroom, hanging out in groups like every 30 minutes, and they'd go in there for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I was like, what are you guys, what are you guys doing in there? Like, I have to know. And they were saying like, honestly, the world is so overwhelming. We need that quiet time in the bathroom to just like reset, be on our phones, and be in the quiet because, but just because they were so overwhelmed with the world because they had COVID at such a peak time in their lives that like they need that reset and they need that time. And it's like, how would we learn that in a survey? You know, so having those times, we went go-karting together, they were crazy. So they still like Dave & Buster's, even though they're like 16, which I thought was really sweet. But I think, you know, up until a couple weeks ago, my only experience with teenagers was being one. And when I was a teenager, I thought I was really old and mature. And then I see these kids and they don't really know how to do anything. They don't really understand like professional lives. They love Dave & Buster's. So it just kind of made me rethink how we think about our customer, where it's like, yeah, they want to be old and they want to be mature and do things on their own. But at the same time, they're still figuring things out. So that's something really cool that we do with all of our brands. It's a lot easier with A&F, where I get to hang out with people my own age and go to bars rather than Dave & Buster's. But another one is tracking sentiment over time. So I don't think this is anything unique necessarily, but we present out on a quarterly basis how our brand is doing from a brand health perspective to our board. So we like to really keep a pulse on what customers are perceiving of us, what we need to change, what we need to improve, how the funnel is doing, and kind of keeping a pulse on that. So that's more of a quantitative thing that we do. Virtual focus groups has also been awesome through Fuel Cycle because we have this massive customer base of a couple thousand customers that we can tap into whenever we want, which is so special. But a good example of a virtual focus group methodology would be, I don't know if you guys are familiar with our Getaway collection at A&F, maybe some ladies in here. Getaway collection is a really cool kind of collection under A&F that's targeted toward like beach vacations and getaways. And we were really trying to identify white space opportunities there. And so a good opportunity, virtual focus group, where we said, okay, let's capture people who are going on a trip and they're literally packing for it, and let's pack with them. We couldn't go to their houses, but we literally had them lay out all of their clothes for the trip and show us what they're bringing, where it's from, and we identified a ton of white space opportunity based off of that, because they're like, wait, actually we don't offer like a sarong, or we don't offer like this clothing that we call it like the in-between clothing on vacations, where it's like you're not at the beach and you're not out. What is that stuff that you wear at the hotel in between and when you just want to be comfy? What's that? So like there's all these white space opportunities that we kind of unlocked there. And then the last one, various sources of data, kind of layering them on, is again a more quantitative approach where we partner with our other teams to actually layer on purchase behavior and online browsing behavior to our community so that we can say, hey, this person, this is what they buy, this is what segment they're typed into, and now let's understand them on a deeper level, and let's understand their why behind all of this.
Yeah, that's it.
Speak to that.
Well, it's just another really cool way that you and the team have leveraged the community and the profiling engine more specifically within the community, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're building these profiles for the folks in your community over time, and some of that is self-reported data from the surveys that you're running and all of the projects that you're running, insights you're collecting there. And then some of it is first-party data or wherever you can gather data on those customers. And I think the fact that you have access to all of these sources of data and you can compile it all and combine them together to build these really robust profiles for these folks speaks to the collaborative nature of you and the teams at A&F, and just the willingness for everybody throughout the organization to participate in this level of research. I think probably a lot of folks here, especially on the client side, have maybe fought some internal battles to get access to customer data or customer lists, or sometimes you have to you feel like you're really fighting to make a compelling case to be able.
No, it is still a fight for us.
Well, I'm sure, yeah, not to undersell that.
It's not easy for sure.
But once you have done that, and you've cut through the red tape and you've jumped through all of those hoops, you have built out these really, really cool profiles that, again, allow you to target your studies for on the front end, or just slice and dice your data on the back end. When I was doing more of the research, I did some of the crosstabs with the A&F team, and you do have about 1 million profile points and a lot of different banner points, but
yeah.
It's been really cool to see how you guys have leveraged that.
Yeah, you could dig into the data forever, which is like a blessing and a curse for someone who likes to dig into the data forever, right, and then gets really behind on other things. And I'm like, ooh, what if we segment it this way?
Can get lost in the labyrinth of profile data.
But I would say one really cool way that we've used that is we've kind of segmented our people into more fashion-forward people versus people who buy us more for basics or something like that. And that's been really powerful to figure out what styles we should be launching based off of who it's appealing to. So lots of different ways to kind of use that data. That leads us really well into the third point here. So we've done the research, we've connected with the customers. How are we actually applying that information at A&F, and how are we kind of keeping the whole organization customer-centric? So kind of broken it out into 3 different categories here. So touch points throughout the year. This is something that's also been a major focus of ours, is to make sure that we're in all of the right rooms, or as many rooms as we can be in. So on a quarterly basis, we do a lot of reporting out. So our marketing teams work on a sprint basis. So every quarter they do a marketing sprint, and we kick off every marketing sprint with, what's our customer doing this time of year? How are they feeling? Who are they interacting with? What activities are they doing? That type of stuff. So we kick off every marketing sprint with that. We also kick off every kind of apparel cycle. So before our designers go in and design the clothing and set up the whole assortment each quarter, we go in and we say, what's the customer doing? What's the customer feeling? What did they think of our clothing last year at this time? So really making sure that every kind of important touch point is kicked off with our research, which has been obviously very difficult to get to be at that point. But it's been really powerful, and I think at first they were kind of like, why are you making us sit here and do this? But I think we're finally to the point where it's like, okay, this is really valuable, and now it's a part of our process that we really value. Second point is collaboration with other teams. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but obviously we have a lot of teams at our organization who have data and they have insights. And I don't know if you guys sat in the talk yesterday. I think it was with Microsoft and...
I think we sat through talks simultaneously about the same topic. I was in the Vanguard one with Chris and Jake talking about the collaboration between different, sometimes disparate insights teams that are ultimately kind of doing the same thing, and this weird divide or silo that has existed in the research world that's now starting to be broken down a little bit.
Yeah, still working on breaking that down. But I think, we've got our monthly touch points, which I think is not necessarily the solution, but it's baby steps to getting as aligned as we possibly can. So we're working a lot with, we call it our data and analytics team that has all of the kind of web browsing data, all of our customer data. So we work with them a lot. We work with our corporate strategy team a lot, who does more of like the actual market research, where it's like, what market should we be entering? How's the clothing apparel market doing? How's activewear doing? And kind of collaborating with them. And then we work a lot with our UX research team as well on the digital experience, because that's another one of our main areas of focus going forward.
Yeah, and that's been one of our areas of focus from just a technology perspective, and in terms of platform development on Fuel Cycle, is really figuring out ways to make it a more collaborative piece of technology to continue to break down those walls and eliminate the silos and make it easy for you and other teams to work together, or make it easier for you to work kind of in more isolation if there are different moderator teams or different use cases for that. So I think as we continue to develop our technology, it's really with that in mind, right?
You guys have been really helpful with that too, because I know some of our UX research team was like, dang, I want that tool. I want access to like these thousands of customers. So I think you guys are actually working a little bit with some UX research people on our team to figure out how we can kind of all work out of some of the same tools and kind of share resources with each other.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, you have all worked to build these huge audiences, right, of engaged members. Like, there's no reason that everybody in your organization can't leverage that somehow.
Yep. And then the last one, balancing proactive and reactive. And I think this also really came up in a conversation yesterday. I don't know if you guys sat in the Warner Brothers conversation and the Ipsos conversation yesterday, but they talked a lot about balancing that proactive and reactive. And I think we all wish that we were like 100% proactive, but I think it's that give and take and making sure that you maintain those relationships and sometimes do the kind of reactive stuff to make sure that they know that you're still there for them and you're not pushing the boundaries too much. So I think we do our best to be proactive with some of these kind of like quarterly meetings that we have. But I think, you still do some of the reactive stuff.
It's a balance.
It's a balance, yeah. So I think these conclusions are kind of obvious now that we've talked through it all. So we can just go over it really quickly. I don't know if you want to cover it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and hopefully the platforms like Fuel Cycle help you feel like you can be a little bit more proactive, right? It's a tool that in theory should empower you to do more research, right? Make it a lot more efficient in terms of the sampling and the way that you're communicating the engagement. And again, tying a bow around what we've been talking about this whole time, really, it's maintaining that engagement is beyond just getting their shopper preferences or reactions to ad campaigns. It truly is understanding them on a deeper level, and you just outlined it all, right? The ways that you go about doing that, and it has been really cool. Even if you had to go into the jungle sometimes to outside of the community to get that understanding.
Yeah, so I think, empowering growth by giving back to customers, making sure that you have that emotional connection with them as researchers, embracing a diverse range of methodologies. And I'd love to talk to you guys all about any other methodologies you think we should be trying that maybe we aren't trying today. And then really just championing your team and making sure that you are at all the right tables and creating new meetings if you have to, and kind of pushing those boundaries, because I think it's an everlasting push from the research standpoint. So, all right.
Cool. I think we have a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Q&A, I think we've got 5 minutes, so that's perfect.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You call them out.
Thanks.
Should I use the laser pointer?
Yeah, is that rude, or like, is it fun? Yeah, so our team works on a quarterly basis with our research calendar. So how kind of apparel works is you have 4 seasons and you're planning. So right now we're planning for next summer right now. And so we kick off every apparel cycle with research, and then
the team goes and kind of tries to figure out their strategies and identifies new questions. So we sit in with them as they're going through their planning process, and we identify questions that need to be answered, they identify questions that need to be answered, and we align across all 5 brands to say, okay, what are the most important questions that we need to answer this quarter? So for the most part, it's quarterly. There's a few things that pop up randomly, but right now we're kind of like in the thick of it. So like every quarter we'll have, you know, a couple weeks where we're really fielding everything, and a couple weeks where we're analyzing everything, and then a couple weeks where we're preparing for the next season. So it's very cyclical, which I do like, because at past companies we kind of just did stuff ad hoc and it was fun, but then it was also like kind of stressful because a project could go on for however long it needed to. So it feels good to kind of have quarterly boundaries. Yeah, they're super biased. They love our brand, which is cool. So I think we just have to be careful with what we ask them. So we're not asking the community about our brand health. We're not asking our community too much about well, we do ask them a little bit about where else they shop, but like we're very cautious about the types of questions that we ask them. So with the community, we're thinking more about, okay, understanding their day-to-day, understanding what customers like from our brand and our style, but when it comes to actually like competitive information or brand image or things that they're very clearly biased on, we try to kind of steer clear and use panel sample for that type of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, Abercrombie and Fitch and all of the brands within are obviously passion brands, right? Where people are going to feel passionately about that. And but I think one of the misconceptions about community research is that it's always going to be favorable, right? Especially in a passion brand like that. But I think, you know, you see it in some of the comments, everybody tends to be super positive about the stuff that you're doing. But in a lot of communities, you know, we found that once you establish that level of trust and again, that engagement, they really do feel like they're in that inner circle. They will let you know how they feel, whether it's positive or negative. Luckily, like we started off this presentation, A&F is on a positive trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, they are still like brutal sometimes. So we'll ask them like what they think of marketing campaigns, and I'll share their information directly with our marketing team and be like, I'm really sorry, like they are not holding back on this one. They did not like this.
Don't kill the messenger.
So they're still very honest. It's not like they're trying to sugarcoat things, but I think some of the teenagers still think that like we're gonna choose them as models or something. So like every once in a while they'll be like, the question corner is like, how can I get chosen to be a model? And we're like, that's not what our team does, but yeah, so cautiously.
Dare to dream though, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we actually sourced them from the Fuel Cycle community, and so they had a really good trust with us. And we do this kind of recruitment a lot where we get one person from the community and we say, bring 5 of your friends. And so for the immersions, it was one girl from the community and she brought 7 of her friends. And so it was like 7 people who kind of knew Hollister, but not super well, and then the one girl who's like a super fan. So it's a good balance, and we also have an awesome community manager who his job is to kind of keep the community up and running and do all of that recruitment. I think it was really hard, like because teenagers like don't text back, and like it was really difficult. But I think, you know, sourcing through the community makes it easy, and then like I think I mentioned the suitcase raids that we did for A&F too. That was also a time where we used someone from the community and we said, hey, bring your husband who's going on the trip with you, bring your friends who are going on the girls trip with you. So we often kind of use the community as like launching out points for recruitment. Makes it easier.
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear you talk about the slump the brand experienced a few years ago. Has the competitive landscape changed through that process? And if so, who are now the competitors that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm sure some of the gals in here could probably guess who some of the competitors are, but I would say there are certain brands who've really emerged, like Aritzia was not a competitor that was really considered a couple years ago. They're a Canadian brand. Our comp set is still kind of similar to what it was, but I think we have aspirations for who it should be. So like, I think our comp set has remained consistently like J. Crew, Banana Republic, Gap. Those aren't the brands that we necessarily want to be associated with, but they're mall brands. So I think, yes, it's shifted. There's a lot of new emergents that we're competing against, especially as we get more and more into different industries. So like we have our Best Dressed Guest collection. So now we compete a lot with like a Revolve that does a lot of dresses. So we kind of have different competitors for jeans versus dresses versus whatever. So we're thinking about it in that way.
Does Abercrombie and Fitch use TikTok
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so we have like micro influencers and major influencers. I'm not in marketing, so I think they maybe call it something else. I don't even have TikTok.
Technology advanced.
Yeah, well, yeah, so basically you'll see like viral genes or things go viral. It's because of TikTok influencing.
Kate will give you some influencers to follow and add to your timeline. I think we're at time, but Fuel Cycle is at booth 620 right around the corner. Maybe, Kate, you can hang out around there, and we can hang out here
Yeah,
to
we
answer
can hang
questions.
out
I think people
wherever.
will have more questions for you than for
Okay,
us.
thank you guys.
Thank you.